This game was played on title Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. It is between Alireza Firouzja and Vietnamese Grandmaster Nguyen Son. And it's a miniature, but it's an interesting game, and we're going to look at it. We're going to see some of the ideas for both sides. And one of the things we're going to focus on is how when one side makes a move, it always creates some sort of weakness. Even if it's a good move, in order to get squares, you have to give squares, and it's very clear in this game. And it's topped off with a very nice combination. Firouzja has white. He begins with e4. His opponent plays g6, the modern defense. d4, bishop g7, knight c3, d6. And we can see black so far has not developed this knight on g8. That would make it a Pirt's defense. Firouzja plays bishop to e3. The idea, of course, is to play queen to d2, play bishop to h6, and exchange off black's very powerful bishop at g7. That's the strategic concept there. But black plays a6. So now we have a genuine modern. And this, I think, was named after Grandmaster Tiger Hillart Person, something like that. Some of you may know his name better than I do. But the basic idea is this. He wants to play b5, b4, to kick this knight on c3 away and unsettle white's defense of the e4 pawn. At the same time, he's going to leave this knight at g8 as long as he can so that the queen and bishop cannot exchange off here on h6 because the knight and the bishop control the h6 square. White cannot make that exchange. At the same time, since he's advancing on the queen side, he can't castle long, and since he's leaving the knight at g8, it's hard to castle short. So black commits to leaving the king in the center of the board at least for a while. This is a very sharp and aggressive approach from black, but it has its downsides, and we're going to see in this game what some of those are. Knight to f3. Firouzja continues to play a very standard orthodox approach to the position. Knight to d7. This is very common. This knight can support a c5 advance or even an e5 advance. h4. And we begin to see one of the disadvantages of leaving this knight on g8. It does keep white from exchanging off the bishop at h6, but it leaves this h5 square unprotected. So the advance h4, h5 gains in power. The only downside, of course, is white is giving up this g4 square for the moment. And because of that, black goes ahead and plays the knight to f6 now because of this issue with the h-pawn. Then white plays a4. Firouzja wants to stop black from playing b5 and expanding on the queen side. And now knight to g4. A Grandmaster Son puts his knight on the sensitive g4 square. He wants to harass this light squared bishop. It should be understood in this position that, the dark squared bishop is of greater value than this knight. So he wants to make that exchange. Firouzja wants to avoid it. So he plays the bishop to f4, but that allows black to play e5, hitting that bishop on f4. Both knights and bishop and d6 pawn support the e5 push. And Firouzja goes ahead and captures on e5. And now knight d to e5. And we can see Grandmaster Son has his minor pieces, his kingside minor pieces, very aggressively posted already. However, even though they are aggressive, they could maybe become uncoordinated if he's not careful. If Firouzja is able to put a little bit of pressure on those pieces, they might stop protecting each other, so to speak. Queen to d2 is played by Alireza, and this allows him to castle long. h6 keeps the bishop out of g5. One of the ideas is that white can play the bishop to g5, hitting the queen, and that can be a bit of an annoying issue for black to deal with. So h6 keeps the bishop out. Firouzja goes ahead and does castle long, and now bishop to e6. Grandmaster Son gets his last minor piece developed, this light squared bishop, and it aims towards the queen side where Alireza's king resides. But because he's given up this e5 pawn, that square, Alireza can play the knight to d4. And that's a well-centralized knight. It hits the bishop at e6, where he could grab maybe the bishop pair. Having said that, so far, black has played well and has a fairly equal position. And if he wanted to maintain equality, one possibility would be to play knight to c6 to challenge this well-placed knight on d4. But instead, he plays the queen to f6. And this is a mistake, as it turns out, but it requires very accurate calculation on Alireza's part. I'll give you a second to see if you can see what the best move for white is in this position. Now, I'll give you a hint. It involves putting pressure on a piece that doesn't have a lot of squares to go to. Okay, here's the answer. The move is f3, immediately attacking the knight on g4, and that knight jumps into f2. So the knight cannot be captured, even though it's sitting there on f2. If the queen were to take it, then black would be able to take the bishop at f4 with check, because the queen was defending that bishop. So that knight at the moment cannot be captured, and it forks both of Alireza's rooks. But we will see, even though knight f2 looks like a very strong move, that Alireza has seen one move deeper. The first thing he does is he takes the knight on e5. And he does it with tempo because he's attacking the queen. Black has to deal with that. And what he's doing is removing that bishop as a target from the queen, so that now he can take the knight without having to worry about the bishop being captured. However, black takes with the pawn. So yes, the knight at f2 is hanging, but black is attacking the knight at d4 also. So taking here would be a big mistake. After this move, black is in good shape. But Alireza plays knight takes e6. And this is the key to his combination. If queen takes e6, then just queen takes f2, and he would just be up a minor piece. So Grandmaster Sun has to go ahead and take one of those rooks. He takes the rook at d1, but now knight to c7 check. Now Alireza begins his own attack with his knight. He's now forking the king and the rook. This king cannot go to e7 because then check forks the king and the queen. It does not have access to the d file at all because the queen controls it. So he's forced to go to f8. And now knight takes rook. Black takes the knight at c3. The queen takes the knight at c3. And black's last hope is this move, queen to d8. Not only attacking the knight, but also taking away all of its light squares. But this is the depth that Firouzja has seen. Knight to c7. The queen at c3 defends the knight. And the knight will comfortably land on the d5 square. And in this position, Grandmaster Sun resigned. I hope you enjoyed this game. See you again soon at Chess Talk. Goodbye.